How can you trust the Bible when it's been translated and retranslated so many different times? My name is Jeff, and I'm the atheist pastor. I grew up an atheist, and then today I'm a pastor. We are dealing with tough questions about the Bible. When you look at it, the Bible has literally been translated 4,000 times. 450 just in English alone. Why do we need so many translations? And how can you believe a book that's been translated so many different times? And how could it possibly be the original book that was first written? Well, in the very front of most Bibles, and especially most study Bibles, you'll find a page like this that goes through and it gives you the contributors. It gives you all of the scholars that worked on each book of the Bible. In this case, for the ESV, there's over 100 different scholars from many different circles and varieties of Christianity and from all over the world that worked on it. The same is true of the New Living, the same is true of the New International Version, and the same is true, was true of the King James Version when it first was translated. And they're getting this translation from the original Greek and Hebrew manuscripts. Now, this is the actual first Bible, that this was what was originally penned. The New Testament in Greek and the Old Testament in Hebrew. And a Bible is only a translation if it's translated once from the Greek to English or to whatever language it's being translated into, or from the Hebrew into English and what it's being translated into. So why do we need different Bible translations at all? Why not just one? Well, one reason is translation philosophy, that there are actually different ways to translate from one language to another. The English Standard Version is a clear word-for-word translation, so it takes every word in here and painstakingly translates it to a word in English. The New Living Translation is a dynamic equivalence translation, and so it takes a phrase in Greek or Hebrew and says, well, how would we communicate that in 21st century English? The New Living Translation, or New International Version, is a mix of the two. It's a thought-for-thought translation. So it takes a phrase and it translates a phrase at a time. The King James is a classic translation that's been around since 1611. It's loved because it's been known for a long time. But also the English language itself keeps changing. The Bible text actually has never changed, but the English language changes about every 30 years. Like take, for example, the word man and what the word man means. Today, in 2019, the word man means something very different than it meant when you talked about it in 1971 when the New International Version was first translated. And so now we're more gender sensitive and we use more terms like human or person to say the exact same thing that was meant when you said man before. Now, how do you know that these things are accurate? How do you know this wasn't just changed all by the Catholic Church and we're getting something there? Well, there actually are 20,000 different manuscripts of the Greek New Testament. As early as 125 AD, that's only 35 years after the Gospel of John was written, we have all of this. And many, hundreds of these translations and these manuscripts were written before the Catholic Church was an organized entity in 330 AD. And so that's important, that the Catholic Church couldn't possibly have gone back in time in order to change manuscripts that were already written and that we already have. And then when it comes to the Old Testament is based off a series of different manuscripts that date as far back as 700 BC, all the way to 400 AD. The first complete Old Testament in Hebrew that we have is the Leningrad Codex from 1000 AD, but we have several translations that we can compare it to. The Septuagint that was written and translated in 250 BC, the Samaritan Pentateuch from Aramaic in 400 BC, and then the Latin Vulgate in 400 AD. And then we compare those manuscripts and those translations to the original here so that we have an agreed upon original. So the error rate in these two manuscripts is lower than 0.1%. So that's in a Bible of 1,000 pages. There is one page that's in dispute by scholars based on the manuscript evidence. And actually most of those passages are found in two places. That's John chapter 8, verse 1 to 11, and Mark chapter 16, verse 9 to 20. And that's it. It's actually, when you take a look at the Bible and how it's come about, it's pretty amazing. Recent revelations has made it even more accurate. That when we look at the Dead Sea Scrolls that came about and were discovered in 1947, there are 800 different manuscripts that they found from every book in the Old Testament. And when they compared those manuscripts that were written between 300 BC and 60 AD, they were exactly the same as the manuscripts that we have today. The same thing happened in the 1980s, where we discovered almost 100 different Greek manuscripts from the 2nd and 3rd centuries before the Catholic Church existed, and compared those manuscripts with the Greek New Testament that we have today, and found them exactly accurate. So ironically, that because the Bible has been translated and retranslated so many times from the original, and because of the manuscript evidence, we actually can have more confidence for the Bible than any other book. I'm Pastor Jeff. Thanks for your time.